I was in labor when my father-in-law burst into the delivery room and tried to hit me. My husband restrained him and the baby went into distress. I never expected to write this post. 3 weeks ago, I, 24F, was in the delivery room with my husband Caleb, 27M, when my father-in-law George, 54M, burst into the room uninvited and tried to hit me. Yes, you read that correctly, he attempted to assault me while I was in the middle of delivering our child. My husband grabbed him in a chokehold before he could touch me, hospital security removed him, and the stress sent our baby into distress. Now our family has completely fallen apart, and I need advice on what to do next. To understand how we got here, I need to give some background. Caleb and I have been married for 2 years. From the beginning of our relationship, his father has been a problem. At first, I wondered if I was being overly sensitive because of my history. I cut contact with my own father when I was 18 due to years of emotional abuse that I won't detail here. Because of this, I initially questioned whether I was judging George unfairly. It didn't take long to realize that George was genuinely problematic. He makes racist comments at family gatherings. He belittles Caleb's career choices. He speaks to his wife, Martha, 52F, like she's beneath him. I get along wonderfully with Martha. She's become a dear friend to me over the years, which makes this situation even more complicated. I want to be clear that I don't have issues with men in general. My stepfather has been an amazing support in my life. My brother and I are incredibly close. My problem isn't with men, it's with abusive people. Last year, Caleb and I discovered I was pregnant. We were overjoyed but also cautious. I had experienced 2 miscarriages before, so we decided to keep the news private for the first 3 months. We only told our mothers, swearing them to secrecy. Martha respected our wishes completely. When we finally announced the pregnancy, George took our privacy decision personally. He told Caleb that I obviously had issues with men because of my history with my father. When we decided not to find out the baby's sex before birth because we wanted it to be a surprise, George made a horrific accusation. He told Caleb that the real reason we didn't want to know was because I planned to terminate the pregnancy if it was a boy. I was stunned when Caleb told me what his father had said. For the record, I was secretly hoping for a boy. I have wonderful men in my life and would have been thrilled with a son. We simply wanted the surprise factor of not knowing until birth. My pregnancy was physically difficult. I struggled to gain weight due to severe morning sickness. I experienced cramping and occasional bleeding that required bed rest at various points. My doctor monitored me closely, and despite the challenges, we made it to 43 weeks, which my doctor described as unusual but not concerning given our continuous monitoring. Throughout my pregnancy, George's behavior worsened. When he learned I was planning a natural birth, he complained about my decision constantly. He kept saying that if a C-section was good enough for Martha, it should be good enough for me. What he conveniently left out was that Martha's C-section was medically necessary due to severe complications. The procedure was so difficult that it led to a hysterectomy, which is why Caleb is an only child. George's comments became increasingly cruel. He told Caleb that our baby probably wouldn't live long, knowing full well about my previous losses. He said my pregnancy would make me fat and that Caleb would become less attracted to me. The comments went on, each one more hurtful than the last. Throughout all this, Caleb typically responded by saying his dad was just joking or by changing the subject. He spent his entire life dealing with George's behavior by filtering it out or mentally checking out of conversations. I understood this was a coping mechanism, but it meant George's behavior continued unchecked. After particularly nasty comments early in our relationship, I made the decision to minimize my time around George. Caleb supported this choice, though he still visited his parents regularly. As my pregnancy progressed, we had serious discussions about George's temper and agreed that our child would never be left alone with him. Now to the birth. I went into labor 3 weeks ago. We went to the hospital where I planned to deliver with minimal intervention, supported by my midwife. The labor was difficult, long and painful. After about 13 hours, I was exhausted but making progress. I had specifically instructed the hospital staff not to allow anyone into the delivery room except those I had approved. This was partly because I feared my estranged father might somehow find out I was in labor and show up. The hospital assured me they would respect my wishes. Despite these precautions, 13 hours into my labor, the door burst open and George and Martha entered the room. I couldn't believe it. Here I was, in the most vulnerable position imaginable, dealing with contractions from a baby that we later learned was 11 pounds, when the one person I absolutely did not want to see walked in. I lost control. After 13 hours of labor pain and months of his verbal abuse, something in me snapped. I shouted at him, calling him an abusive person and demanding he leave immediately. I told him nothing was coming out of my body while he was in the room and that if he wanted to meet his grandchild, he needed to get out now. George turned purple with rage. He lunged toward me and raised his hand. It was clear he intended to hit me, though he hesitated when he seemed to realize we were in a hospital setting. Before he could decide what to do, Caleb grabbed him from behind and put him in a chokehold. Caleb is significantly larger than his father, about 50 pounds heavier and 6 inches taller. The look in Caleb's eyes made me think he might seriously hurt his father if no one intervened. Thankfully, hospital security arrived quickly and removed George. Martha stayed behind, apologizing profusely and crying. The stress of the confrontation caused our baby to go into distress. I began panicking, which stalled my labor. The medical team had to intervene with various techniques to help me progress again. 2 hours after George was removed, our daughter was born, with Caleb, my mother, and Martha present. She was healthy despite the complications, and we named her Lily. In the aftermath, Caleb and I have been struggling with what to do. I want no contact with George, but this creates several problems. Martha is partially paralyzed from a car accident years ago. She relies on George financially and physically for mobility. If we cut off George completely, we effectively cut off Martha too. Caleb would lose both parents, and Lily would only know my mother as a grandparent since my father is already out of the picture. There's also the legal question. Part of me wants to report George's attempted assault to the police. However, our state has a 3 strikes law for violent offenders. What Caleb never told me until recently is that George has 2 prior convictions for domestic violence, both involving incidents with Caleb when he was a minor. There were multiple other arrests where Martha dropped the charges. The physical abuse apparently stopped only when Caleb grew large enough to defend himself and his mother. If I press charges now, George would almost certainly go to prison for a long time under the 3 strikes rule. While he deserves consequences for his actions, I don't want to be responsible for Martha losing her caretaker and financial support. I also don't want Lily's birth to be forever associated with sending her grandfather to prison. After leaving the hospital, we told George directly that we didn't want him around me or the baby. He ignored this and showed up at our house with Martha a few days later. Caleb physically blocked him from entering, while allowing Martha to visit. Since then, Martha has visited alone several times, but George has not returned. What do I do now? What do we do now? I want George completely out of our lives, the same way my father is. But I don't want to lose Martha, and I don't want Caleb to lose his mother. I don't want my daughter to have no grandparents on her father's side. But I also don't want my daughter around someone who attempted to assault her mother during childbirth and who has a documented history of violence. Am I being too quick to cut him off because of my history with my own father? Is there any middle ground here that protects our family while maintaining a relationship with Martha? Update 1. First, I want to thank everyone who commented on my original post. Your support and advice helped more than you know during one of the most difficult periods of my life. It's been 2 weeks since I shared our story, and there have been significant developments I wanted to update you on. The morning after I posted, Caleb approached me about the situation with George before I could bring it up. I was exhausted from taking care of Lily and barely sleeping, but he insisted we needed to talk. What he told me shocked me. Caleb revealed that George's behavior at the hospital wasn't the first time his father had attempted to physically intimidate me. Apparently, at our wedding reception 2 years ago, George had gotten drunk and made threatening movements toward me when I was alone getting drinks for Caleb and myself. Caleb's cousin Jake witnessed this and intervened, pulling George away before I even noticed. Jake and Caleb agreed not to tell me to avoid ruining our wedding day. This revelation hit me hard. For 2 years, I'd been around someone who had wanted to hurt me, and I hadn't even known. Caleb apologized repeatedly for keeping this from me, explaining that he thought it was an isolated incident fueled by alcohol. He realized now that his father's pattern of escalation should have been addressed much sooner. Caleb and I talked for hours that day. We both shed tears as we discussed what George's presence in our lives would mean for Lily. Caleb admitted that he'd spent his entire life normalizing his father's behavior, making excuses, and checking out mentally when things got bad. Seeing George attempt to assault me while I was giving birth to our daughter was the wake-up call he needed. Together, we made the decision to completely cut contact with George. We agreed that keeping him in our lives would ultimately harm Lily and any future children we might have. The cycle of abuse needed to end with us. The next challenge was talking to Martha. Caleb visited her alone the following day while I stayed home with Lily. He returned looking drained but resolute. Martha's reaction was not what we expected. Instead of defending George as she had done throughout their marriage, Martha revealed something that changed everything. She had been planning to leave George for months. The incident at the hospital was the final straw. She disclosed that she had been secretly working with a disability advocate and had secured accessible housing in a community for people with physical disabilities. She had also been saving money from her part-time remote job that George didn't know about. Martha explained that she had stayed with George all these years partly due to her physical limitations and financial dependence, but mostly out of fear. The day George tried to hit me in the hospital was the day she realized he would never change, and she couldn't enable his behavior any longer. Caleb was stunned. He had no idea his mother had been planning this escape. Martha asked for our help with her transition, which we immediately agreed to provide. She moved into her new apartment last week, with Caleb and some friends helping transport her belongings while George was at work. George's reaction to Martha's departure was exactly what we feared. He showed up at our house the next day, pounding on the door and shouting accusations. He claimed I had poisoned his family against him and stolen his wife and son. He demanded to know where Martha was. We didn't open the door and called the police instead. By the time they arrived, George had left, but we filed a report documenting the incident. The officers who took our statement suggested we file for a restraining order, which we did immediately. We included documentation of the hospital incident and Caleb's statement about George's history of violence. The temporary order was granted, and we're waiting for the hearing date for the permanent order. Martha is adjusting to her new independence. She seems lighter somehow, despite the challenges of living alone with her physical limitations. She's been visiting us regularly to spend time with Lily, and the relationship between her and Caleb has strengthened now that George isn't controlling their interactions. As for pressing charges for the hospital incident, we've decided to hold off for now. The restraining order provides some protection, and we want to see if George respects these new boundaries before escalating to criminal charges. Martha supports whatever decision we make but has asked us to give her time to establish her new life before potentially dealing with a criminal trial where she might need to testify. I've received some negative messages from George's side of the family, accusing me of breaking up a marriage and denying a grandfather access to his grandchild. Caleb has been fielding these calls and messages, explaining that George's behavior was unacceptable and that our priority is protecting our daughter. Some family members have understood, while others have taken George's side. Throughout all this, Lily has been our anchor. Caring for her keeps us focused on what really matters. She's growing quickly and starting to show her personality. Caleb is an amazing father, and watching him with our daughter reminds me daily that the cycle of abuse can be broken. We're still taking things day by day, but we're united in our decision to keep George out of our lives. Martha's unexpected strength and decision to leave him has made the situation both easier and more complicated, but we're committed to supporting her new journey while protecting our own little family. I'll update again when there are new developments or after the restraining order hearing. Update 2. It's been a month since my last update, and the situation with George has escalated in ways we never expected. The restraining order hearing happened 2 weeks ago. Caleb, Martha, and I all testified about George's behavior, including the hospital incident and his history of violence. The judge granted a 1-year restraining order, prohibiting George from coming within 500 feet of our home, Lily, Caleb, or me. What we didn't anticipate was George's reaction to losing both his wife and the court case. 3 days after the hearing, Martha's new apartment was broken into. Nothing valuable was taken, but her personal items were scattered everywhere. The police couldn't prove it was George, as there were no witnesses or cameras, but we all knew. Martha was shaken but refused to let fear drive her decisions. She had a security system installed and continued living independently. Then came the revelation that changed everything. Caleb's aunt, George's sister, reached out to us with information she felt we needed to know. She had remained silent for years out of family loyalty, but after hearing about the hospital incident, she couldn't keep quiet any longer. According to Caleb's aunt, George had been violent long before his marriage to Martha. In his early 20s, he had dated a woman who ended up in the hospital after what was reported as a fall down the stairs. George was questioned but never charged. The aunt had witnessed George's violent temper with this woman before the incident and had always suspected he was responsible. More disturbing was what she told us about Caleb's birth. Martha's emergency C-section and subsequent hysterectomy weren't just medical complications as we'd been told. According to the aunt, George had pushed Martha during an argument when she was 9 months pregnant, causing her to fall and leading to the emergency surgery. The hospital staff had suspected abuse but Martha denied everything, claiming she had tripped. Caleb was devastated by this information. The story of his birth had been a complete lie. The aunt provided old family letters and photos that supported her claims, including correspondence between family members expressing concern about George's treatment of Martha before and after Caleb's birth. Armed with this new information, we went to the police to add to our existing reports. The officer who took our statement was concerned enough to assign a detective to look into the pattern of behavior. The detective interviewed Martha, who finally confirmed the truth about Caleb's birth and the years of abuse she had endured. Martha's confession opened floodgates of emotion. She shared how George had controlled every aspect of her life since the accident that caused her paralysis, which she now admitted wasn't an accident at all. George had been driving recklessly during an argument, intentionally frightening her, when he crashed the car. Her spinal injury was the result, but she had protected him, telling everyone he had swerved to avoid hitting an animal. For 30 years, Martha had hidden the full extent of George's abuse. Her recent decision to leave him hadn't been as sudden as she'd initially portrayed. She had been planning it for years, slowly building courage and resources. The district attorney is now reviewing the case to determine whether they can bring charges against George for the hospital incident as well as potentially reopening investigations into the historical incidents. The 3 strikes law is still a factor, which means George could face significant prison time if convicted. Meanwhile, George has been retaliating in other ways. He called Caleb's workplace, making false allegations that nearly cost Caleb his job until colleagues vouched for his character. He's been spreading rumors in their community that Martha left because she was having an affair. He even created fake social media accounts to harass me and post unfounded claims about our family. The psychological toll has been immense. Caleb started having nightmares about his childhood, remembering incidents he had suppressed. He's struggling with guilt over not protecting his mother sooner and anger at himself for bringing George into Lily's life, even briefly. Through all this, our focus remains on protecting Lily and supporting Martha. We've installed security cameras at our home and Martha's apartment. We've informed Lily's future pediatrician and childcare providers that George is not allowed any access to her under any circumstances. Martha has started therapy to process the decades of abuse and her new independence. She's also joined a support group for survivors of domestic violence, which has been incredibly helpful for her. Despite the challenges of living independently with her physical limitations, she says she feels freer than she has in 30 years. We're scheduled to meet with the district attorney next week to discuss potential charges against George. I'll update again after that meeting with whatever we decide and any new developments. Update 3, it's been 2 months since my last update, and I believe this will be my final post about this situation. We've reached what feels like a resolution, though not the one we expected. First, the legal developments. After meeting with the district attorney, we decided to proceed with pressing charges against George for the attempted assault at the hospital. The evidence, including multiple witness statements from hospital staff, was substantial. Given George's prior convictions and the new information about his history of violence, the DA felt confident about the case. George was arrested and charged with attempted assault. Due to the 3 strikes law and the circumstances of the offense, attempting to assault someone in labor, he was denied bail and remained in custody awaiting trial. What we didn't anticipate was George's health situation. 2 weeks after his arrest, he collapsed in the jail and was rushed to the hospital. The diagnosis was a massive stroke that left him partially paralyzed on his right side and with significant cognitive impairment. The doctors believe the stroke was likely related to untreated high blood pressure and decades of heavy drinking. The criminal case has been complicated by his medical condition. The DA is still pursuing charges, but George's attorney is arguing that he's not competent to stand trial. Evaluations are ongoing, but the medical experts suggest his impairment is permanent and severe. George was eventually transferred from the hospital to a state-run long-term care facility for inmates with medical needs. The irony of his situation, now physically dependent on others after causing Martha's paralysis, hasn't escaped any of us. Martha's reaction to George's medical crisis was complex. Despite everything he put her through, 30 years of marriage left its mark. She visited him once in the hospital before he was transferred to the state facility. She reported that he didn't recognize her and became agitated during the visit. After consulting with her therapist, Martha decided not to visit again, focusing instead on her own healing and new life. The family dynamics have shifted dramatically. Some of George's relatives who initially sided with him have apologized to us after learning the full history. Others maintain that Martha and Caleb abandoned George when he needed them most, ignoring the decades of abuse that preceded this moment. Caleb has processed much of his childhood trauma through therapy. He's become an advocate for domestic violence awareness, particularly focused on helping children who witness abuse. Watching him channel his pain into helping others has been incredible. Martha continues to thrive in her independent living situation. She's become active in her new community and has even started dating someone she met in her building, a kind widower who treats her with respect and dignity. After decades of abuse, seeing her experience a healthy relationship has been healing for all of us. As for Lily, she's growing and developing beautifully. At 5 months old, she's hitting all her milestones and bringing joy wherever she goes. Caleb is the father I always knew he would be, gentle, protective, and present. The cycle of abuse that dominated both our childhoods has been decisively broken. We've made the difficult but necessary decision to maintain no contact with George, regardless of his medical condition. The restraining order remains in effect, and we've made our wishes clear to the medical and legal authorities handling his case. Some people might view this as heartless, but we see it as the necessary protection of our family. George showed no remorse for his actions before his stroke, and his medical condition doesn't erase the danger he presented to us, particularly to Lily. His choice to attempt to assault me during childbirth revealed the depths of his violent nature. That moment crystallized for us that no reconciliation would ever be possible. We've created firm boundaries. George will never meet Lily. He will never be part of our family gatherings. We will never visit him or allow him access to our lives in any way. These boundaries aren't about punishment but about protection and breaking the generational cycle of abuse. For those who suggested therapy would help George change, I want to note that Martha tried for years to get him help. He refused every offer of counseling, denied his violent tendencies despite multiple convictions, and blamed everyone else for his actions. His stroke may have physically limited his ability to harm others, but it didn't transform him into a different person. Martha visits us weekly now, building a beautiful relationship with Lily. My mother and Martha have become friends, giving Lily 2 loving grandmothers. Caleb's relationship with his mother has deepened now that George isn't controlling their interactions. We're moving forward with our lives, focusing on creating a safe, loving environment for Lily. The shadow of George's abuse will always be part of our family history, but it won't define our future. We've learned that sometimes the healthiest choice is to remove toxic people from your life, even when those people are family. Thank you to everyone who offered support and advice throughout this difficult journey. Your perspectives helped us navigate one of the most challenging periods of our lives. While our story doesn't have a neat, happy ending, we've found peace in our decisions and hope in our new family dynamics. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. My husband's best friend started flirting with me, and when I told my husband, he accused me of having feelings for his friend. Then his friend moved in with us and things got way worse. I, 26F, find myself in a situation that's slowly eroding my marriage and my sanity. It involves my husband Bruce, 28M, and his best friend Alex, 30M. I've been with Bruce for 6 years, married for 3, and I thought I knew what I was getting into when I said I do. But now, I'm not so sure. Bruce and Alex have been inseparable since they were kids. They grew up on the same street in a small town in Oregon, where everyone knew everyone else's business. Bruce was the shy, bookish type, always with his nose in a comic book or playing video games. Alex was the golden boy, charismatic, athletic, and popular. By all accounts, they shouldn't have been friends, but they clicked from day one. I met Bruce in college. We were both English majors, bonding over our shared love of obscure poetry and indie films. He was different from the guys I dated before, thoughtful, kind, and genuinely interested in what I had to say. Our relationship progressed quickly, and before I knew it, I was head over heels. And then Alex entered. Bruce had told me stories about his best friend, but nothing prepared me for the whirlwind that was Alex. He breezed into our lives during spring break of our junior year, all charm and easy smiles. I remember thinking he looked like he'd stepped out of a J. Crew catalog, perfectly messy hair, bright green eyes, and a smile that could melt ice. At first, I was thrilled that Bruce had such a close friend. Growing up as an only child with parents who moved around a lot for work, I'd never experienced the kind of bond Bruce and Alex shared. They had inside jokes that spanned decades, could communicate with just a look, and seemed to genuinely enjoy each other's company. But as time went on, I started to notice things. The way Alex's eyes would linger on me a bit too long. How he always managed to sit next to me at group gatherings. The subtle touches that could be passed off as friendly, but felt charged with something more. I tried to brush it off. After all, Alex was a notorious flirt. He'd had a string of girlfriends throughout college, never settling down with anyone for more than a few months. I figured it was just his nature, and as long as I maintained clear boundaries, everything would be fine. Bruce and I got married right after graduation. It was a small ceremony in Bruce's hometown, with Alex as the best man. I still remember his toast. He talked about how Bruce had always been there for him, through thick and thin, and how he knew I would make Bruce happy because I was basically the female version of him. At the time, I thought it was sweet. Now, those words haunt me. After the wedding, Bruce and I moved to Seattle for his job at a tech startup. I found work as a copywriter for a local advertising agency. Life was good, we were young, in love, and building our future together. Alex moved to Seattle 6 months later. He claimed it was for a job opportunity, but I couldn't help wondering if there was more to it. He quickly became a fixture in our lives, always dropping by unannounced, joining us for dinner, tagging along on weekend trips. Things started to change about a year ago. Alex began dating Sierra, a pediatric nurse he met at a charity event. She was sweet and down to earth, and for a while, I thought Alex had finally found someone who could keep him grounded. But 3 months ago, they broke up. Alex was devastated. Apparently, Sierra wanted to have children, but Alex had gotten a vasectomy years ago, adamant that he didn't want kids. The breakup was messy, with Alex accusing Sierra of trying to change him. Since then, Alex has been leaning on us, particularly me, for emotional support. He'll call or text at odd hours, wanting to talk about his feelings or seeking advice. I've noticed he rarely reaches out to Bruce for these heart-to-hearts, preferring to confide in me instead. Last weekend, things came to a head. We were at a mutual friend's birthday party, and Alex had clearly had too much to drink. Bruce was engrossed in a game of pool with some colleagues, leaving me to deal with an increasingly handsy Alex. He cornered me in the kitchen, his breath reeking of whiskey. "You know," he slurred, leaning in close, "Bruce is a lucky guy. If I'd met you first." He trailed off, his hand coming to rest on my waist. I froze, unsure of how to react without causing a scene. Thankfully, another friend walked in at that moment, breaking the tension. Alex stumbled away, leaving me shaken and confused. Now, I'm at a loss. Do I tell Bruce about Alex's behavior? I'm worried it could destroy their friendship, and I don't want to be the cause of that. But I also can't continue like this, constantly on edge around someone who's supposed to be a close friend. To make matters worse, we have a camping trip planned next month, just the three of us. It's an annual tradition that started back in college, but the thought of being isolated in the woods with Bruce and Alex for a whole weekend fills me with dread. I love Bruce with all my heart, and I value the friendship we've built with Alex over the years. But I'm starting to feel like I'm caught in the middle of something I never asked for. There's a part of me that wonders if I'm overreacting. Maybe Alex is just going through a rough patch and needs support. Maybe I'm reading too much into innocent gestures. But then I remember the look in his eyes at the party, the weight of his hand on my waist, and I know in my gut that something isn't right. I've thought about talking to Sierra, Alex's ex, to get her perspective. But I'm worried that might be crossing a line. Plus, I don't want to drag her into this mess if I'm just imagining things. Bruce has always been somewhat oblivious to social cues. It's one of the things I love about him, his innocent, trusting nature. But now, I find myself wishing he were more perceptive. Maybe if he noticed Alex's behavior, I wouldn't have to be the one to bring it up. I'm lost and could really use some advice. How do I navigate this minefield without blowing up my marriage or my husband's most important friendship? Should I confront Alex about his behavior? Or do I need to have a serious conversation with Bruce about setting some boundaries with his best friend? I feel like I'm walking a tightrope, and one wrong move could send everything crashing down. Any insights or experiences would be greatly appreciated. Update 1: It's been a month since my original post, and I wish I could say things have improved. Unfortunately, the situation has only become more complicated and distressing. First, I want to thank everyone who responded to my original post. Your advice and support gave me the courage to have a conversation with Bruce about Alex's behavior. It didn't go as well as I'd hoped. When I brought up my concerns, Bruce was initially dismissive. He laughed it off, saying, "That's just how Alex is. He's a friendly guy." When I pressed the issue, describing some of Alex's more inappropriate actions, Bruce's demeanor changed. He became defensive, accusing me of misinterpreting things or, worse, encouraging Alex's attention. Maybe you're the one who's developing feelings for him, Bruce snapped. Is that why you're suddenly so obsessed with his behavior? I was stunned. I've never given Bruce any reason to doubt my loyalty, and his accusation hurt deeply. We argued for hours, with Bruce vacillating between dismissing my concerns and accusing me of impropriety. By the end of the night, we were sleeping in separate rooms, and the tension in our house was palpable. The next day, Bruce apologized for his outburst, but I could tell he still didn't fully believe me. He suggested that maybe I was just feeling insecure because of how close he and Alex are. It felt like he was gaslighting me, making me question my own perceptions. Despite my misgivings, we went ahead with the camping trip as planned. I hoped that being in a neutral environment might help clear the air. I couldn't have been more wrong. The first night around the campfire started pleasantly enough. We roasted marshmallows, shared stories, and for a while, it felt like old times. But as the night wore on and the beer flowed freely, things took a turn. Alex, emboldened by alcohol, became increasingly flirtatious. He kept finding excuses to sit next to me, his thigh pressing against mine. At one point, while Bruce was fetching more firewood, Alex leaned in close and whispered, "You know, I've always wondered what it would be like if we'd met first." Before Bruce. I recoiled, making it clear his advances were unwelcome. But the damage was done. Bruce returned just in time to see me pushing Alex away, and his face darkened with anger and hurt. The rest of the trip was a disaster. Bruce alternated between giving me the cold shoulder and picking fights over trivial things. Alex, seemingly oblivious to the tension he'd caused, continued to try and engage me in private conversations. By the time we returned home, I felt like I was walking on eggshells in my own marriage. Bruce's trust in me seemed shattered, and he began checking my phone when he thought I wasn't looking. He started making snide comments about my relationship with Alex, implying that I was the one pursuing his best friend. Things came to a head last week when Bruce announced that Alex would be staying with us for a while. Apparently, Alex had lost his job and needed a place to crash until he got back on his feet. Bruce didn't even consult me before making this decision. I tried to protest, explaining how uncomfortable I was with the idea, but Bruce shut me down. "He's my best friend," he said coldly. "I'm not going to abandon him just because you're feeling insecure." So now, Alex is living in our guest room. The atmosphere in the house is unbearable. Bruce spends most of his time with Alex, leaving me feeling like an outsider in my own home. When we are together, Bruce is distant and suspicious, questioning my every move. Alex, for his part, seems to be reveling in the situation. He's constantly around, inserting himself into every aspect of our lives. He walks around shirtless, makes suggestive comments when Bruce isn't within earshot, and finds excuses to be alone with me. I feel like I'm losing my mind. My marriage is crumbling, my husband doesn't trust me, and I'm living under the same roof as someone who's actively trying to undermine my relationship. I've thought about leaving, but where would I go? Bruce and I moved to this city for his job, and all our friends here are really his friends. I feel isolated and trapped. I don't know what to do anymore. How did things spiral so out of control? How do I fix this mess when my husband won't even listen to me? I'm starting to wonder if there's any way to salvage my marriage, or if I'm fighting a losing battle. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. I feel like I'm drowning, and I don't know how much longer I can stay afloat. Update 2. It's been 2 weeks since my last update, and I'm still reeling from everything that's happened. I want to thank everyone who reached out with support and advice. Your words gave me strength when I needed it most. The situation with Bruce and Alex continued to deteriorate. Living under the same roof as Alex became unbearable. He grew bolder in his advances, often cornering me when Bruce wasn't around. I felt like a prisoner in my own home, constantly on edge and afraid to be alone. Bruce's behavior didn't improve either. He became increasingly paranoid, accusing me of sneaking around with Alex behind his back. The trust between us was completely shattered. One night, after a particularly nasty argument, Bruce stormed out of the house. He didn't come back until the next morning, reeking of alcohol and refusing to tell me where he'd been. I knew I couldn't continue living like this. I reached out to my sister, Emma, who lives a few hours away. I confided in her about everything that had been happening. She was horrified and immediately offered me a place to stay. The day I decided to leave was both the hardest and easiest of my life. I waited until both Bruce and Alex were out of the house. I packed a bag with essentials, wrote a note explaining that I needed some time away to think, and left my wedding ring on the kitchen counter. As I drove away, I felt a mixture of relief and heartbreak. I've been staying with Emma for the past week, trying to process everything that's happened. Bruce has been calling and texting nonstop, alternating between angry accusations and tearful pleas for me to come home. I've blocked Alex's number entirely. Yesterday, I received a call from an unknown number. It was Sierra, Alex's ex-girlfriend. She had heard through mutual friends about what was happening and wanted to talk. What she told me left me stunned. Apparently, Alex has a history of pursuing his friends' partners. Sierra revealed that before they started dating, Alex had made advances on his previous best friend's girlfriend, causing a huge rift in their friendship group. She also told me that Alex's vasectomy story was a lie, he had never had one. He simply used it as an excuse to break up with women when things got too serious. Armed with this new information, I decided it was time to confront Bruce. I asked him to meet me at a neutral location, a coffee shop halfway between Emma's place and our home. When Bruce arrived, he looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days. Before he could say anything, I laid out everything I knew, Alex's history, his lies, and his persistent harassment. I told Bruce about all the times Alex had made me uncomfortable, the things he said and did when Bruce wasn't around. To my surprise, Bruce broke down. Through tears, he confessed that he had suspected something was off with Alex for a while but didn't want to believe it. He admitted that his accusations and paranoia stemmed from his own insecurities and fear of losing me. Bruce revealed that the night he didn't come home, he had actually confronted Alex about his behavior. Alex had denied everything, gaslighting Bruce and playing on their years of friendship. Bruce, confused and hurt, had spent the night driving around, trying to sort out his feelings. We talked for hours, laying everything out on the table. Bruce apologized profusely for not believing me, for letting his insecurities cloud his judgment, and for putting our marriage in jeopardy. He told me he had kicked Alex out of our house the day after I left, finally seeing through his manipulations. I'm still processing everything. While I'm relieved that Bruce finally believes me, I'm hurt that it took me leaving for him to see the truth. The trust between us has been severely damaged, and I'm not sure if it can be fully repaired. For now, I'm staying with Emma. Bruce and I have agreed to start couples counseling to work through our issues. We both recognize that we have a long road ahead of us if we want to save our marriage. As for Alex, Bruce has cut all ties with him. We've heard through the grapevine that he's trying to spin the story to make himself look like the victim, but thankfully, most of our friends have seen through his lies. I'm taking things one day at a time. I'm focusing on healing and figuring out what I want for my future. Whether that future includes Bruce remains to be seen, but I'm committed to putting myself first and not letting anyone make me feel unsafe or unvalued ever again. Thank you all for your support through this ordeal. Your advice and kind words have been a lifeline during the darkest moments. I'll update again when I have more clarity on where things stand.